I remember the summer of '43. Not the warmth, but the unnatural stillness that choked the fields of sunflowers around the colossal, obscene bulge of the Kursk salient. I felt a cold dread there, a strategic chill that had nothing to do with the sun. We all knew this was Germany's final, terrible gamble in the east. The last throw of the dice to reclaim the initiative we had hemorrhaged at Stalin. I watched the movements on the war maps. The concentration of the finest panzers the Reich had ever produced, the new Panthers. The fearsome Tiger motorized fist poised to strike, north and south, to sever that Russian throat. But for weeks, the fist refused to close. I watched as Hitler hesitated, obsessed with having every new, unproven machine perfect, delaying the inevitable moment of crisis, and with every passing day of delay, my dread deepened. I could feel the ground shifting beneath us, literally and psychologically. That waiting, that agonizing pause in the scorching Russian summer, was the secret that ultimately broke the German high command. It allowed the enemy, the Soviets, to transform the steppe into an unparalleled, 7-layered metallic mausoleum. While we polished the steel of the Tigers, they buried themselves. Laying down a density of mines up to 4,000 per square mile in some sectors, I learned later that defied comprehension. I imagined the shovel strokes, millions of them, day and night, digging, laying wire, sighting anti-tank guns. It was not merely defense, it was an act of geological warfare, turning the earth itself against the principles of our Blitzkrieg. We were preparing for a sprint, and they had laid a marathon of trenches, bunkers, and interlocking fields of fire. The moment finally came, a humid dawn in early July. I stood near the forward command post, the air thick with the smell of diesel, dust, and something else, a strained, silent expectation. The attack was launched, and the initial roar of the German guns was deafening, promising the old power, the swift breakthrough that had defined our early victories. But the response that came back was not the expected panicked retreat. It was a methodical, pulverizing reply. I saw the faces of the German assault troops as they hit the first defensive belt, a look of shock, then disbelief, then grim resignation. The shock was the realization that the Soviets not only knew the precise time and place of the attack, but had rehearsed the counter-response until it was muscle memory. The disbelief was seeing the sheer, unholy depth of the prepared positions. Our advance, calculated in days, was measured in yards, sometimes in agonizing feet. It was not a physical failure, not yet. It was a failure of the soul, built upon the terrible, creeping knowledge that the Soviets had been given the script to our final act. Every commander I spoke to reported the same thing. The methodical, almost detached way the Russian gunners laid down their fire. The lack of panic, the endless series of precise obstacles. We expected a door. We found a concrete labyrinth. We expected a clean thrust. We found ourselves smothered in a slow, grinding process of attrition. The psychological contract of the Blitzkrieg speed, surprise, decisive encirclement was violated in the first 48 hours. I saw the map markers stall, not because of a lack of courage, but because the terrain itself had become a weapon directed by an unseen all-knowing hand. I could hear the clang, even from a distance, a sound like the world's largest hammer striking an anvil of steel. That was the sound of the ultimate, monstrous clash at Pokrovka. Our most powerful tanks, the Tigers and the Panthers, were thrown into a close-quarters brawl against hundreds of Soviet T-34s and massed anti-tank artillery. It was an apocalyptic spectacle, the tank formations rushing headlong into one another, not in a careful tactical engagement, but in a brutal, chaotic yard-by-yard detonation. I saw the fire bloom high into the summer sky, the dense black smoke of burning oil and burning flesh shrouding the horizon. The heat was infernal, the noise continuous, a physical assault on the senses. We achieved a certain tactical superiority. Yes, the individual Tiger tank was a devastating weapon, but I watched as the relentless waves of Soviet armor crude, simple but endless, absorbed the blows, trading 2 tanks for 1, 3 for 1. And that was the moment the scale of the tragedy became truly clear to me. The enemy could afford this trade, we could not. Every burned-out hull, every lost crewman, was a drain on a finite resource we no longer possessed. The Soviets were bleeding, but their wound was merely a surface cut. Ours was an amputation. I stood amidst the smoke, watching the wreckage pile up, the ghosts of the young men already beginning to haunt the scorched grass. And I knew we knew that the moment of initiative had not just been lost, it had been irrevocably handed over to the enemy. The true end of Citadel did not come with the last shot fired on the steppe. It came with a message from the Führer's headquarters, a cold directive that shattered the last vestige of operational hope. The offensive was to be halted, partially due to the Allied landings in Sicily. I watched the commanders' faces, men who had gambled their careers, their lives, and the future of the Reich on this single massive push. They received the news not with fury, but with a hollow, terrible silence. The reason was irrelevant, whether it was Sicily or simply the realization of unsustainable losses. The order was the final, devastating admission. It was Hitler's surrender of his dream of decisive victory in the East, a retreat not of miles, but of the will itself. The German High Command was not defeated by a single strategic stroke at Kursk. It was broken by a psychological collapse, brought on by the revelation of their own predictable failure. The secret was the enemy's foresight, their capacity to endure, and our own hubris. We had believed we could impose our will on the land, on the people, one last time. We failed. The fields of Kursk grew silent again, but the silence was poisoned. It was the quiet of a strategic death, the echo of 600,000 lost lives, the stench of an empire's final, dying gasp. I walk those fields sometimes, in my memory, and I see the twisted metal, the young faces of the men who believed in the invincibility of the armored fist. And I always return to the same reflection. The secret that broke the High Command was not a decrypted message, but the realization that the enemy has willed their capacity to sacrifice one more soul, to endure one more winter, to hold one more line of defense was a force that no armored vehicle could ever truly crush. That knowledge, I tell you, was heavier than any Tiger tank. The sun set over the steppes that evening, not on a battle, but on the certainty of an irreversible, long, and agonizing end.